Okay, and what was it that prompted you to leave the relationship and move back to California?
Um, so growing up, I actually never thought that I would be married or have children. Um, so I know a lot of people ask, why was it 10 years and, no marriage or anything at that time. But I never wanted to be married and I never wanted to have children, or so I thought at that time. I was also still in college. He was 2 years younger than me. So those were not really thoughts that we had in our mind. Um, so my ex, after living together for about 4 years, he decided to purchase his own a home of his own. And by that point, we were kind of we weren't sure, because I know that he was from a big family. He wanted to be married and have kids, and I wasn't sure. So at that point, he moved into his home, and I stayed in the apartment that we shared together. So that was the beginning of us kind of separating but still being together. And what ended up happening was that his father retired and he gave him one of his businesses. So my ex became busier with a business. And then 2 years after that, he actually purchased another business with how they were doing. So he ended up being, instead of a worker, he ended up being a boss of several workers and two businesses. And so what I've noticed is that at that time, the stress of all of that kind of made him fall deeper into drinking or going out and being, with his buddies and things like that, kind of trying to escape his normal everyday life. And I was also working because, I had my apartment and everything. So I didn't feel like we could see each other as often. And he kind of was doing his own thing at that point. And I also was, hanging out with my girlfriends and things like that. So that was the beginning of us drifting apart. And when I turned 30, I realized that I actually did want to have children and I do want to be married. And because of who my ex was and how he incorporated me into his family life, I saw the beauty of family and that I really wanted to share. Not only did I fall deeply in love with his family, that I wanted to actually have children of my own to give them that type of life. So I wanted that more and more. And so I let him know that. But at that point, he was so into going out with his friends and not really focusing on that type of thing at that time, that it kind of pushed us away. And essentially, so I decided a few years after that I wasn't really getting anywhere there anymore. I wasn't happy with the relationship and how it was. So I decided that I would move back to California. And I actually gave up the lease to my apartment and I quit my job. And I had a moving van. Everything was in boxes, everything. And I actually broke up with my boyfriend before then. We were separated for about 4 months. And then he didn't know, but he came back to see me in my apartment to talk, and I opened the door and he saw that I actually had moving boxes, and he didn't know that I was moving. And he didn't know that it was that serious. So he actually asked me if I could move in with him, that he didn't want to lose me, and that we should live together in his house. So after much thought, I decided that I could do that we would, to give us another chance. And so I moved in with him instead of moving back home to California. So we lived together for about a year. And within that year, it was just really horrible because he wasn't, I didn't realize how much he went out and how long he stayed out. And so he was going out probably from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, sometimes on a Wednesday night. He would play card games with his buddies on like a Monday night. They always had that tradition, so they got together. So essentially every night he was gone. And what I realized then is that he was not just hanging out with his buddies, but with other women. And that's when I decided to leave him. I was going to leave. And then he was so distraught about that he actually had his family come in and talk to the both of us on how we can not have, me leave. And so we talked about all of the things that was going to happen. And he was very good for about 6 months. And he, came home. We were good, everything like that. But then he regressed back to going out and then being with other women and things like that. And I just knew that, on top of everything that already happened, I just realized that I wasn't getting anywhere. And I felt so hurt. I've never been, hurt like that by him before. So I just knew that I couldn't do that anymore. I had to leave for my own self-respect and for his respect for me and just, my own dignity essentially. So I moved away. I actually moved away on a day that he wasn't home. So he didn't know that I was planning to move. So he was not home. He actually came home to an empty house. Because I didn't want anyone else because his family, to talk me out of it or anything like that, because it was already several years at that point that he was doing that type of behavior. And I just really had enough at that point. I was tired of not being able to sleep at night because I was wondering where he was, or, having him, it just felt like a very mother-child where I was trying to see, where he was. And that just wasn't who I wanted to be. I wanted to be a mom, but not his mom. And I just wanted him to be respectful of our relationship. So I ended up leaving on a weekend that I knew that he wouldn't be home. So that's how all of that happened. And that's when he, came to my state and wanted to get back together and things like that. And then he tried for a long time, but I was just so hurt by everything that happened that I, didn't think that I could ever feel like, that we would be together again. But time has made me kind of soften up, and I feel like also I just, he's tried a lot, and I feel like I pushed him away a lot. And if I could do it over, I would just do things a little bit differently, but I didn't have that knowledge in my anger before. I felt like I was just too angry to make those decisions, or too upset, or too hurt. So now I feel like I'm a little bit more clear-headed. And he's older too. I know that he doesn't do a lot of that stuff anymore. So I just feel like it would be better. But now that he has another girlfriend, that just puts, the plans on hold essentially of what I would want.
Yes. And I feel for you. I'm listening to this and hearing that you kind of look back and say, oh, I wish I'd done this a little differently, that a little differently. I have to tell you that what you did by the way that you left and the no contact, when you finally left for California and had no contact, it is why he pursued you in the way that he did. There's nothing as valuable and useful for a woman to use as no contact. But interestingly enough, you really didn't want him at that time, and that's why the no contact was easy to do. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
And then when you started entertaining his calls, I think you said you went back to Illinois for maybe a wedding or something, and when you saw him again, it was wonderful. At that time, did you have sex?
We did.
Okay. And from the times, that you did see each other, did you have sex?
Every time, yes.
Okay. That, and I ask it for a reason, because for us, it's a natural thing that occurs because we're feeling something about the man, and the man obviously is feeling something about us. So it makes absolute sense. However, it shows a man something that doesn't allow for him to actually make a decision to make you the one. And I can tell you more about that, and I want to tell you why that is and explain more about how this is for him and then what you can do from here. And we'll do that in a moment.
Looking to lure back an ex-love? Let Coach Paula help you get back together with a man you realize might be the one for you. Make the next time around a charm with complete commitment. Connect with Coach Paula Grooms on Instagram, Facebook, or at CoachPaulaGrooms.com.
So we're back with 35-year-old Amanda, who is currently the ex-girlfriend of 33-year-old Michael. And Amanda has really come to a new place in her life, wanting to get back with Michael. It's at a long distance, even this breakup. She's in California, he is in Illinois. And now he claims he is in love with a new girl, and yet he has, as early as or as recently as this past summer, meaning summer of 2020, he actually was kind of leading you to believe, Amanda, that he was interested in getting back. Is that the case?
That's correct.
And so when he was kind of doing this, I assume that I think you went there for some other event, and he found out and got in touch with you and kind of pursued getting you with you, and then you had sex, I assume, and then it kind of just kept going on from there. Is that the deal?
That's correct.
So he was leading you to believe. Now, did he have this girlfriend at the time?
He actually made me, he just kept calling her a girl, or he didn't actually even say formally girlfriend. So he just said that he was talking to this girl, but he was happy to see me and things like that, and that's kind of where he led from that point of view.
And so what did you talk about, if anything, at that time? I assume you weren't there for that long, or were you doing a long distance back and forth? How many times have you seen him, or did you see him when you were, quote unquote, kind of feeling that you were back together?
I didn't feel that we were back together, but I did go there for a wedding. So, but because of COVID and things like that, I actually had more time to spend there than I originally planned. The wedding was actually just a very small get-together with friends. It wasn't anything like that, but my heart was set on seeing him, to be honest, so that's why I went there as well. So, and I stayed there a little bit longer just to see, how things would progress with him. But, and COVID actually helped with that because I didn't, things were closed where I live. Our state was shut down. So, but when I was there, basically, I did tell him how I feel. I was very open. I said that, I've had about 3 years to think about things, and that I would like to, to give us another chance. I told him that I wasn't upset about a lot of the things that happened. I've kind of, understood him, and I wasn't. He told me that he saw a difference, that I didn't approach him in like my usual, angry, or not angry, but just kind of, suspicious tone. Things felt very normal, and I kind of poured my heart out to him, and I basically let him know exactly. I wasn't, beating around the bush at all. But I did notice that he wasn't exactly on board, that you would expect someone that, has been trying to get with a girl for, about 3 years.
But what did he say to you?
He told me that he was talking to another girl, that she did live out of state. He did say that he was, he didn't like the fact that we weren't together for about like the 3 years. He told me that he wasn't sure how he felt, that he kind of felt himself moving on. He wasn't sure how it would be looked upon, like with his family. I could feel that he didn't know that, the spark that we had, I felt like it just wasn't ignited as it was. But then again, when we saw each other, it was like the sexual tension was there. I could tell that he really did like miss me and like to see me. It wasn't just sex as well. We actually watched a movie together, like in his bedroom, and like cuddling together. He wouldn't let me go. He actually slept with me in his arms like the entire night. Every time that we would sleep together, it wasn't just sleeping and then separate. It was like cuddling afterward and just being together. And, I could tell he enjoyed being with me. It's that feeling of like all of your dreams are coming true in that moment, and you're just in that moment and you're very happy.
So, of course, it felt like in that moment, all of your dreams, the amount of time and history that the two of you shared, of course he wanted you, of course you wanted him, of course it felt like that. And what happens for us as females is that you connoted that that meant something more for him than in the moment. Now, this is going to sound different for you, but I'm going to give you kind of an overview because there's so much here, of course, because you've been together a lot and you've had many breakups. And this for you as a woman doesn't mean much in terms of how you can feel about him, see him, in every way make an assessment of him and know who he is and feel for him in the way that you do. That all makes sense. But for the man, it's quite different. And for you to have a shot at getting back with him, you are going to have to understand this on a very deep level. Because it seems, from your point of view, and I understand this completely, very almost black and white. You would not have slept with him had you not wanted more with him. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. You know that that is not true for men, correct?
I do, yes.
Okay. But a man will, of course, want to be with you and show you those intense feelings in the moment because he'd had them as well. In other words, you're not crazy for thinking that he was in that moment where you were in terms of feeling for you. Do you know what I mean by that?
I do, yes.
Okay. However, it's exceedingly different, and he actually told you what you need to know about his experience of it and why he is much more, in a way, confused about it. But his confusion is very different than yours. And here's how it works. As a woman, you're feeling like you're getting mixed messages from him. And you are, right?
That's true.
You totally are getting mixed messages. Because you as a woman, you would not, and hearing your story, I understand that if you had had someone else back home, or someone else that you were seeing, you would not have slept with him. Is that likely true?
I've never cheated, so yes, that's completely true.
Mm-hmm. But that's not true for him. You know that about him. It could have even been true when you were living with him, right? Because you didn't know where he was and what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
He's male, and it generally isn't quite the same for males. And I'm not making him a bad person at all. Don't get me wrong. We have to understand males, and males will do what is allowed in the context of any relationship. And when I say allowed, meaning the woman doesn't just walk out, or he knows that he can, quote unquote, get away with it, or many variations of that. And again, I'm not impugning him for that. Some men could not do that, but I'll tell you why he actually felt he could. And this could be a bit mind-boggling to you, because you sound like an extremely caring, considerate, wonderful woman that he has known and would know from how you've presented that you would not cheat, that that's just not who you are. Is that a fair statement?
That's absolutely true.
Okay. But here's what will be mind-blowing about it. For many of you who listen to me, understand my work, watch me on YouTube, you know that I work from a very foundational principle that couldn't be more true, and it was probably understood earlier, but that Sigmund Freud qualified for us and put to language. And that is the deepest thing in the male brain. We call it our reptilian brain, the oldest part of the brain that doesn't have language. And that is what is known now as Freud's Madonna or dichotomy. Have you heard me talk about that?
No.
Okay. Do you know about it from Freud's work?
No, I've actually never heard about that before.
Okay. It is foundational, and it is one of the most unfair things that is in us as the human animal. What do I mean by that? Freud qualified, and it was called at the time, and for many, many years, they just recently changed the last part of it into Freud's Madonna-whore dichotomy from the Madonna-whore complex. And Madonna, of course, being Mother Mary. For younger people listening, it's not Madonna the singer. Or if you are not familiar in the Judeo-Christian, Madonna as Mother Mary. So it's opposites. And it's the law of opposites in the male brain that women do not have in the same way as men do. And this is in large part biological, anthropological, sociological. But if we deal with the biology of it, it's very simple. That men put women in one of two categories according to how the woman presents to the male. This can be simply in pictures before they even meet you. And it's why it's so important to put yourself in the right category for what you want in a relationship. Here's why you are so incredibly confusing to Michael. And I want to use some things that he talked about in terms of what he said to you at that first, last summer of 2020. So here's a start. That because men place us in one of two categories, and they do this almost instantaneously from the sight of us. And this is getting more and more confusing for males because in our Western society, the relaxation of certain things in terms of dress and way of presenting ourselves on social media, and the posing that women will do, the sexualizing, in other words, of us. But Michael always puts you in the Madonna category from the start. Would you say that's fair?
I would.
Okay. But here's what happened. Madonna for men is woman that you respect, revere. She is relationship material. She is marriage material. She is mother material. And as he's grown older, and he is even thinking more along these lines now, the more confused he is for two reasons. One is, woman in Madonna category would, or I should say, she always, because this is the black and white of the male brain, and this is so profound because women don't have this. We have a fattier corpus callosum that goes on top of our brain, and it makes our brain think in much more contextual ways, especially in this arena. We don't think necessarily black and white about a male. We can when the evidence is so profound that a male is a quote-unquote like a player, okay? But otherwise, we don't look at males in these black and white terms. We know that they can be all across the scale, from right to left. But because men don't see us as that, and I'm not saying that it would be better if they did. Of course it would be better, because we are not just in black and white. It's so unfortunate, but it is the case. And we must attend to what works for men. So he knows that in the first category, a woman who is in the Madonna category, she has expectations and would not allow herself to be with any man with whom she is not the one and only, and moving towards a totally committed relationship, and that is marriage. Now again, that may sound like antiquated even, but this is in the male reptilian brain. It is why he is confused about you as being marriage and mother material, because you presented to him throughout your relationship that you didn't care about that. You stayed in a relationship and living with someone that he knew he was getting away with something, and you kind of did too. You see, it's a kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't, but definitely damned if you stay with it. So things were set up, believe it or not, to have him, while he feels love for you, so confused, and certainly not putting you in the right category of wife and mother. He doesn't know the change, and even if he did, he cannot process it in a way that you process change in him, change in people, because of the black and white nature. He even said to you, he kind of felt that he was moving on, but you stayed and continued to have sex. He said he felt the sexual tension, and believe it or not, that sexual tension leads them more towards the second category. And then, also, we have the sociological aspect, which, and if you read my book, you know all about this, that men make decisions about committing. And what they want most in the world is to show the world that their decisions are good decisions and that they don't fail from those decisions. And for him to kind of bring you back into the family whereby he feels somewhat, maybe even shame, is exceedingly difficult and an uphill battle. So you have things at a biological level which is confusing. Because again, for the man, it's just simple black and white. In other words, you can think of the idea of good girls do or don't, bad girls do. You see? That's very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Because he knows you. Then you've got the sociological. And we haven't even factored in the distance, which for women, it's quite easy for us to have long-distance relationships, but because of the puppy principle, it is not at all easy for a man to have a long-distance relationship. So, Amanda, what are you thinking now about all that I just said, and what are your questions?
That was actually so insightful. Thank you so much for that. I'm kind of blown away actually right now. I did want to say that because I did have a very close connection with his family, his sister, within the time of us not being together, I did go to her wedding, but then she got pregnant right away after I moved away. I have been in speaking terms with her. She sends me pictures of her children all the time. And then also this summer when I was in Chicago, I actually met up with his mom 2 times. And we went on a girls' day. So we did join together. We went out and shopping for home items. And then she took me to lunch. And then we actually went back to her home and we spent time together there as well. And then so that happened. And then I did, his sister actually was going to have another baby while I was there. And so they invited me to her home while her and her husband were in the hospital. And so I got to meet his niece that I haven't met before. And then I was there with his mom and his dad for a few hours with them. And so we were just talking outside. We were trying to, do the distance thing. So we just set up chairs outside 6 feet apart. And we were just together while she was playing with the dogs. His niece was.
And how, hold on. And how has this been related to him, or in your dealings with him, how does this all come together? Because you can have interactions with family members, but what on the back side of it, on his side of it, what does he believe is going on?
Just when you said that, to his decision to make sense for the family, or things like that, I feel like the family, I know that they know that we have issues, in the past before, but this summer I did make a point to actually meet up with them, and I felt like they were positive, and I wanted him to see that as well, that me and them can be together without him in the picture, and it would be a good interaction, just to make sure that he saw that there wasn't any bad or harsh feelings or anything like that. So I just wanted to mention it. It's not a big deal, but just so that you know.
Okay, so here's the thing. It's not that there's bad feelings. In other words, there doesn't have to be bad feelings on the part of the family. That's not And I'm glad you gave me that background, but it's not about that. They can like you as a person. They cannot have any bad feelings about you or the past or anything of the sort. This is about him as a man and his decision making. Now, I know that could feel like, well, it doesn't really make sense, but it's much deeper than that for him. And what you kind of showed is that you are willing to be in the second category with him. You're even willing to show his family that you are. Now, that is going to seem really, wow, out there. But unfortunately, this is likely at play. And what I mean by that is that if the family knows him at all, and they live there in that area, they know that there have been these other women, and that there are the other women, and that maybe there's even this quote-unquote girlfriend this past summer. Do you believe that to be true, that they know?
Yes, they definitely do. I know that for a fact, actually.
Okay. So what, unfortunately, he as a man feels like not only with him are you in second category, but you also are with the family, believe it or not. And this is what is so frustrating, angering, damning. It's not something that you want to hear, I even want to say, but unfortunately, I believe it to be totally the case. Now again, it doesn't make you, in the man's eyes, a bad person. It doesn't make you any less desirable or even lovable. Not at all. What it does make, however, for the man, is exceedingly difficult to marry you because of a foundational thing that I say all the time. What you do with him, he thinks you could do, would do, or are doing with other men. That's part of the dichotomy. So there would be quite a bit of work to be done for you, and I'm not saying it's not possible. It could be possible, but it will be through time, and it will be you doing things quite differently from here on out. Does that make sense?
It does, and I'm ready to do whatever you tell me, because all of this information is amazing. I never thought of things like that before.
It's so great that you get it. And I heard something the other day which is so, I think, profound. It's even, like you said, this is new to you, but when you hear something like what I just said that's totally different or new, it's the truth in you responding simply to the truth of what I said. That you already know it. And that's what's so cool. You're not bucking it. Because our society bucks it at every turn. And it makes our men so confused. Now, I believe that's unfortunate in that the most profound thing that's unfortunate is that this is in males. It's in them biologically, and we can go anthropologically if you want to know more about why it exists. You can read somebody like Desmond Morris, The Human Animal, or many, many things on why it exists. But it does for propagation of the species, which is, why we are put here. And men did utilize this, and they have utilized this thing in their brain from time immemorial to pick appropriate women in order to propagate the species. It's almost Darwinian, so to speak. It's too bad, but that's what it is, and we have to attend to it in order to allow a man to feel absolutely 100% confident in one thing in terms of us being their one or their partner. And that is that we will be faithful. And that any offspring that come from being with us and protecting us, that's what they did in the wild, is theirs. And heretofore, before DNA, how did they know that? They didn't. They had to go on their perception. And how did they go on their perception? Not from what the woman said, but what she did, and what she did with him. And ergo, my saying, what you do with him, he thinks you do with all men. So we can turn it around, perhaps, but it's going to take some time. Here's what I hear you have going in your favor. He feels a lot for you. His family feels a lot for you. There is love there. There is history there. There is all manner of good things there. And this new woman in his life is relatively new. It doesn't mean that he's ready. And I don't know that he's ready to commit. I'm not hearing it, and I'll tell you why. If this were the one, the girl this summer, let me ask you something about him before I finish that statement. Do you think he's a guy with a good conscience?
Yes, I do, actually.
Okay. Does he feel guilt and shame?
Yes, I could tell that he felt guilt the next day when we first slept together.
Okay, so that's good.
Can I also mention something else when you were saying about that? So what I did notice when he reached out for me for my birthday, I figured that something was going on with them. So I actually, because we all have such mutual friends, I found her profile on Instagram, and I noticed she wasn't following him. She actually unfollowed all of his friends in Minnesota, all of his family. She unfollowed his sister, his cousins, his best friend, his cousins' wives, like everybody. So I was like, wow, that's why he's reaching out to me. I thought that they broke up. So I actually, on her profile, she unfollowed all of them, but she made her profile public. And what I saw was, so she's actually a bottle service girl in the club, and she is 7 years younger than him. And then she also has photos of herself in bikinis and thongs. So that actually also made me look at, like, why, and I don't get me wrong, I actually have been, like, in magazines. I used to do pageants and things like that, but it's not that, the thong or the bottle service girl. Like, I actually had a corporate job, so it's just totally different. And she just turned 26. So when I was looking at the profile, I thought that was so interesting because, and then on top of that, when I did go and I slept, I could tell that he felt guilty the next day. And I told him, and I said, that I wouldn't be with you if I was with someone else because, I could tell that he felt guilty. But he actually told me, he said, I know you and I know that you're not with anyone else. I just feel guilty about, like, I knew that he felt bad because he had the other girl. I didn't know at that time that was like I can almost say that she was probably his girlfriend at that time. That's why he felt that guilty. It wasn't just a girl that he was talking to, So, and then after we slept together, he actually wanted to see me again. But I was the one that told him, I said, because you have that other girl, I felt actually really guilty because, for the other girl, because I put myself back in the shoes of what he was doing to me towards the end of our relationship. So I told him, I said, I don't want to do to this girl what you were doing to me at the end because it really sucks, And that's when he told me, he text messaged me the next day and he said, I'm in a different place in my life. Like, maybe we shouldn't see each other, which I already told him we shouldn't, So it just, that whole Madonna thing also, it's kind of interesting because I look at this girl and I'm like, bottle service girl, lives in a different state. And I know him. He's the type of guy that he cannot.
Okay. I'm sorry, I have to cut you off because I understand.
Yeah,
okay?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I totally understand. Mm-hmm.
So that's great that you know this about her. And it's great that you know it about him in terms of him feeling the guilt. And that's why it was so profound that I find that out.
Mm-hmm.
And then also that he is not in a place at this time to be serious. You see, he is probably with this gal, if you say she's on social media in the thongs and stuff like that, unfortunately, because it means nothing. And the fact that she's a bottle girl means nothing about who she is. She can be the most, moral, faithful, loyal, honest woman. That's just what she does for her job and makes her living at. Correct?
That's true.
However, again, for the male, that's a hard one to wrap his brain around. It's too confusing. So even if she is his girlfriend and he's being mostly faithful to her, it produces guilt that he stepped out on her. And she's not the issue here at all. What I can tell you, which is good for you to hear, she's not the issue. Because this is not the woman who is going to likely be his wife and mother of his children.
And can I say something else too?
Mm-hmm.
The only reason that I reached out to you as well is because when I saw that profile and then what I noticed is that he actually she went to Florida for her birthday. Her birthday is April 6th. His birthday is April 7th. She actually posted a ton of bikini photos, and that's when he actually liked all of those bikini photos and made the comment that I saw, that's my girl, he did with the heart eyes. But she's in like a bikini in front of everybody, So, and then for their birthdays, they posted happy birthday, like my love, and things like that. So that's where I noticed that they were probably back together.
Okay, but it doesn't, you see, it doesn't mean she's in first category. She's showing herself in that way on social media. It provokes any man, whether she's a 10 or a 5, doesn't matter. He's going to say, yeah, my girl, so that guess what happens when she's in Florida? What do you think from the male perspective? Guess what happens while she's in Florida?
I agree. And that's why I thought, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully she doesn't sleep with anybody else, right?
Right. And that's why I thought maybe he wanted to like get her back, But that's like not good. That's not a good foundation.
It's not about getting her back. It's not about getting her back. It's about having her not sleep with anyone while she's there. It's in the moment. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's that immediate, I don't want anybody else to have her while she's away there. You see what I mean? Doesn't
Right.
mean I'm going to commit. Doesn't mean anything more than in the moment. Now, we don't know absolutely, right? We don't know who she is, but we do know she's posting these kinds of pics. That's not really going to be helpful to have her in the first category. And the fact that she is a bottle girl, and you said you met him in a nightclub, he gets the drill, right? He's having fun.
Exactly.
Yeah. And when I told you he's not ready, I'm not hearing he's ready at all.
Mhm.
See? And that's okay, because you need the time. You need the time. You need the time for him to be ready. It's going to be what you do in the meantime, and do things just a little bit differently, but you've got a lot of the foundational stuff that can help you. So the message must be more clear. It must be very profound. It must be consistent. And in your case, you may actually be able to do something, although it's going to require quite a bit of thought. But if we were working together, it would be doing something and systematically seeing the results. But it's going to be changing things up a bit so that he feels, right now, what happens with these mixed messages, he is not at all solid. And you can do two things at once, meaning you can show him, I am in the first category and woman of value and what it is that you want, while he is, you don't pay mind to the other relationship, and you don't delve into that with him. It's a lot of it's very contextual with what is going on, because what I'm hearing is he just proved what I was saying to you. He's not into this girl for any kind of meaningful, deep relationship. He's having fun, and she's in second category. He's put her there. We don't know if she is. I mean, remember, there is no real category for women. It's a foundational thing in the male brain. But I'm just telling you what he's doing, and she's not in that category. He just wants to show kind of, quote unquote, if for lack of a better word, kind of ownership, and reminding her while she's away and looking hot in her thong bikini for all to see. Because he doesn't want the mouse to be playing around while he's not there. And that's very simple and 101 and understandable. But it doesn't mean that he has any thought of making her the one. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. So I hope this was helpful today, because there is so much here that I'm hoping women can really understand, that you have to get back to the foundational things. And the how you do it, well, that's something that we can't cover here in a podcast, because it's each week. That's why I work with women in the Lure Him Back program, in the Lure Him In program, and my GPS, the Groom Positioning System, because it's all together. It's the commitment to it. Because we as women, we want what our heart wants. But unless we commit to it through the actual doing of what works for the man to understand, vis-a-vis how a man sees it and understands it. And I'm hearing that you have a shot at it, Amanda. You absolutely do. I'm hoping that that gives you hope.
It does. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It really, really does. And we can talk more off the air about that. But for anybody who is in this situation, there is hope when you've been in the first category initially, you hear the dichotomy of, for example, the difference between Amanda and perhaps giving the impression, like with the other woman that Michael is seeing in Florida, that it would be quite difficult for her, perhaps, to get into first category. But with Amanda, you have a better shot, but you do have to totally reset things, and you can't be giving him mixed messages and or not being straightforward. Because even now, when you're interacting, this is first category stuff, when you're interacting with a man, what he is likely thinking right now, because he has believed that you are a gal that will live with someone, that you're not interested in getting married, that you don't really want to have kids, that you're more just kind of go with what is for the moment, that right now he's not suiting your needs. So you're just answering him here and there. That can't go on. It has to be profound. It has to be one time. And then you have to do through time what will allow him to get into his deepest feelings and then react with each subsequent thing that he does. Because this, of course, isn't over for you or for him. And I'm hearing that, and that's why you have hope.
That's amazing.
I'm really hopeful for you. And again, we can talk more about that once we are off the podcast here. I appreciate you doing this today because I hope it's helpful to hear these things, other women hearing these things through your experience. So I thank you again for doing that.
Thank you so much, Paula. This has been so wonderful and insightful. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. So that was quite interesting in that not everything is so black and white. And when we come from things from our own female point of view, we can be sending mixed messages so easily to a man. And while this may seem like there is no hope with the distance and with all that has gone before them, all that water under the bridge, in this case, I believe that there is. But it's what Amanda will do from here. And she can no longer give the mixed messages that she is giving. So glad that she could see that. I find that for all of us, there just comes to a place when we start to get it. And when we do, that's when we do things differently, and that's when we can have a different outcome. It's scary, anxiety-provoking, it's super challenging, but anything worthwhile is a challenge. And when you open up to what really goes on for men, you can much more readily, quote unquote, speak their language. And much of that is an art, because you won't typically be saying much. It's what you do. Because again, men relate via action, not verbalization. There has to be a combo here, and certainly there's going to have to be some communication here with Amanda and Michael that is much more straightforward, value-based, and not seemingly play Michael's game that has been played in a way that has assuaged some of his anxiety, but then ramped it up, and he feels that he has no footing underneath him in this relationship. And so he will be going to others and having fun with many pretty puppies, likely in the second category. I know his heart is likely with Amanda, and there has to be a lot done here that allows him to feel secure in that. Michael's feeling no security now, and that will have him all over the place. And you watch, I have a YouTube video about exes reaching out. And he will be reaching out in all manner of anxious states and in the moment to just know whether or not he still has her there to even just answer. That's if she continues to do what she's doing. Things must be different. And that's what my Lure Him Back program is all about, along with my GPS, the groom positioning system. Because when we get right with ourselves and our message to the man, and in the right category, which Amanda can put herself in and reset his feelings, reset his thoughts, reset all about this, then it can go about restarting the possibility of a real committed relationship leading to what Amanda wants, marriage and children. That can happen. So for you here, I hope you're subscribed to this podcast, also to my YouTube channel, and on Instagram. Please follow me there, Coach Paula Grooms. In the meantime, until we're talking again, make sure that with every man in your life, in the subtle, very small ways, that you are making him wonder.
I trust you got a lot of good information from today's video, so I hope you'll subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're sure to get all my upcoming videos as soon as they come out. And if you are here and seeing this video between May 19th, 2021 and June 19th, 2021, then I urge you to go to my spring Not Just a Fling giveaway. It's a giveaway especially for subscribers here, and if you are already subscribed, you just go to that video, Spring Not Just a Fling giveaway, and you will get all the instructions on how to enter. If you are a new viewer, then please do subscribe and be part of the Wonder Women family. And you can do that by going to that video as well, subscribing, get all the details there, and get a wonderful giveaway and getaway in 2021.